Yo, what's going on, everyone? Brian and Jim here, and today we are reviewing, debatably, one of the most hated Resident Evil games.
It's definitely one that, to a lot of people, it's kind of a low point. Not the lowest point, but definitely a low point.
So which is it, Jim?
Well, Brian, today, we're looking at Resident Evil 5.
Scripted. We're not.
Just go into the video.
Do you think it's going to be good?
What, this or the video?
Either one.
Yes.
Please hit like.
Released in 2009, this was developed and published by Capcom. Came out on the PlayStation 3, the 360, Windows, Android Shield TV, and later got ported to the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One. This is the 7th main entry, even though it has a 5 in the number. Well, at least that's not confusing. And it's really known to be one of the most controversial games in the entire series.
Shut up, Jim!
What?
Stop trying to bring up the allegations of racism!
Oh my god! God damn it, no!
What?
I was going to talk about how it was just, controversial because it went in the full action movie route and not like, survival horror anymore.
Oh, my bad!
God damn it! Well, I've got nothing. Let's just talk about the goddamn game. Hey, let's forget that happened.
The graphics. I'm sounding like a broken record, but I gotta be honest. Since Resident Evil 3, Capcom really knew how to deliver on the visuals for these games. And no matter how you feel about the gameplay, the control, or the story, you cannot deny that for the time, these visuals were impressive as shit. You have some of the largest settings in any Resident Evil game to date. I mean, these things look like something straight out of a Michael Bay film. The explosions are impressive, you have some really big bosses, just like in Resident Evil 4, and the mutations of monsters like the Oroboros are just really, really impressive. While some of the character models like Chris may be a little bit exaggerated and a little goofy, they're still really well done. The only other thing I really want to mention is just the use of lighting in this game is definitely the most unique in the series because you have some of the brightest outdoor sceneries in some of these towns, and then when you go into shadowy areas, it just feels way darker than it does in previous titles before. And to be honest, we have no major gripes, so we...
Right! You didn't talk about the Las Plagas. Ow, what?
You mean the Oroboros?
No, what? No, the Plagas. The ones from 4 that,
Jim, they're Oroboros. They're completely different. What are you talking about?
Oh, really, Brian? They're completely different? Oh, let's look at this. And look at this. I'm sorry, you're right. Yeah, you're right. It's completely different.
So what are you saying?
It just looks the fucking same. They got lazy and reused shit.
Stop being racist.
God damn it!
Either way, we both gave it 10s, and when it comes to beer, I'm just gonna have one for Jim and...
Wait, no! The sound. Well, when it comes to the sound, it's actually pretty damn good. Kind of a problem with the later Resident Evils is the music in the game is certainly really well done, it's just completely unmemorable. And this kind of falls into that same trap. Not taking anything away from the composition, because it's all great. It's that big, orchestral, over-the-top kind of music, it builds and crescendos as the action gets to its heightened paces, but, you just kind of forget after a while. The voice acting is probably the best it's ever been in Resident Evil. There's one thing you can say. For its goofy beginnings, the quality of the voice acting steadily improved with every single release, and this is no different. Chris, Sheva, secret enemy character that returned... Oh, fuck it, it's Wesker. It's been like 10 years since this game came out. All the characters in the game, they all sound great. Sound effects are fine. I can't say that they're over-the-top great, but the guns sound like guns, so I guess I can't complain too much there. The explosions are big and boomy, the monsters are still pretty squishy, though maybe not as squishy as before. So, overall, it's a good package, it's just nothing revolutionary, so we gave it 8s. And when it comes to beer, I'm just gonna give 1 beer because you can always use more squish.
The control I can keep quick because this was basically identical to Resident Evil 4. As I mentioned in that review, most Resident Evils will just take that control scheme and move it forward. The one improvement we really appreciate with this game is that You could use the directional pads, the up, down, left, and right, to quick select your weapons, which really helps in a game like this that emphasizes action so much more, because you don't have to slow down, hit start, go in your menu, select the weapon. It adapted for the time, so we actually really appreciated that. But everything else was pretty standard. You still used a bumper and your aim button when you're using the knife. You still had the quick time events for a lot of the boss fights, which, once again, for Jim and I, that's a little bit annoying, but it is what it is. Everything else was just as smooth as 4, so when it comes to scores, we both gave it 8s. There's no real complaints we have here. There's still just a little bit of clunkiness with the general movement of your characters through this game. When it comes to beer, I'll just add 1, because I really appreciate that quick select of your primary weapons.
Alright, the gameplay. Well, let's get the general thing out of the way. If you've played Resident Evil 4, you've mostly played Resident Evil 5, but there's one glaring difference, and that is the forced co-op throughout the entire game. Whether you play it with a friend, locally, whether you play it with a friend online, or you just use a computer AI. I'll be honest with you here. When we started recording for this game, we were doing it in late 2018, early 2019, so by then I'm assuming this game's been patched to hell, because I heard stories about how completely awful and stupid Sheva was as an AI counterpart, and I gotta say, she really wasn't that bad for me at this point. She maybe caused 2, maybe 3 dumb deaths over my entire playthrough, and it was nothing that I couldn't just do myself eventually, that it didn't really impede the entire game experience. Now, when it was first released, it's probably terrible, but at this point, and if you haven't touched the game yet, don't let that be a big detraction for you. The other big detraction, as I mentioned earlier, was the big push towards a full action experience. And here's the thing with that. It does a really good job with it, though. So it's one of the best behind-the-player, third-person, shooter action games of the era that you really can play. It's really well done. It's not just another boring, generic cover-based shooter. It's big, it's over the top, it's goofy, but at the end of the day, it controls well, and it has some really cool set pieces throughout. A big complaint that I would have is, by the halfway point of the game, you can either tell that they're starting to get rushed or they're running out of ideas, because you don't have those cool moments. You have these cool moments in the early ones, like shooting guys off the back of motorcycles, or big battles on a boat, or going through these dark caverns where one of the players has to hold a light and then, try and put it down if they want to attack anything. Cool ideas like that. When by the second half, it's just Resident Evil 4 inside of a lab again. So that's pretty disappointing, but at least it started out kind of interesting. It's a little weird because there's a lot of rehash in the first half, but that's also where some of the coolest moments are, where there's some of the best story moments in the second half, but it's also kind of just an overall rehashed feeling. It's weird to describe, but overall the gameplay is good. One thing I gotta mention too is just the little touches that they did. For one, you don't have to dick around with your items and fitting them into certain spaces like it did in 4. Now, each player has 9 sets, and you can swap back and forth, and between chapters, you can put it in the overall inventory. You can upgrade weapons in between levels, and it's just, you can customize all the weapons to be the way you want. And then you even get to the more minute details where, like in 4, whenever you picked up money, it would fill up the entire screen saying, got 100 gold. Where in this, it's just a little blip in the bottom corner. Doesn't get in the way, doesn't take away from the action going on. It's the nice little things they did to streamline the action. Besides the fact that there's less QuickTime events overall, which is always welcome. They're still here, and they can still make up a big part of some fights, but just not all of them like they were before, which is a nice touch. Also making a return is Mercenaries mode, where they drop you in a level, you have to get a certain amount of kills and set high scores for yourself, you can extend your time, blah 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 blah, stuff we've all done before. And for progression of the series, since really Resident Evil 3 where it went more towards action with each successive game, this is probably the pinnacle of just being a straight up good action game. So I think a lot of the hate at this point is pretty unjustified, though if all you want from Resident Evil is horror, I get it. So at the end of the day, we gave it 7s. The biggest takes against it were the hiccups you could have with the computer-controlled AI, and just the general full move away from horror, which we're big fans of. And when it comes to beer, I'll add 2 beers. 1, for all the unlockables that you can have within the game, and 2, for Sheva's unlockable outfit.
Ow, what? Jim, stop trying to see her discoloration.
Her discoloration.
Do you need me to explain it?
Oh no. Oh no, you do not. I'm using that from now on.
The originality, I gotta be honest, there's not a ton here. Because it copied so much from Resident Evil 4, we were really struggling to find areas to give this game points. But the best we could come up with were really the thing I mentioned in Control, the ability to quick select your weapons, and the fact that Sheva is constantly following you. Yes, you did have previous games where you'd have certain sections or missions where you'd have a character with you, but this was really the first game where you have a dedicated partner throughout the entire game. Resident Evil 0 did have the partner sharing mechanism, but it wasn't quite the same. We didn't give it many points, so at the end, we could only come up with a 4. This game didn't offer too much, it just took what Resident Evil gave us, eliminated a little bit more of that horror, and just upped the action. When it comes to beer, I'm just going to add 1, and this is where Jim and I kind of feared back in the day the game series was going after Resident Evil 4. Resident Evil 5 just kind of cemented that.
Alright, when it comes to replayability, you have the option of New Game Plus. You have the option to play it through again as, Sheva or whatever character you want. You have Mercenaries mode, which in reality is almost infinitely replayable. And you have all the different unlockables you can go through and try and get. You have all the different even filters that you can put over the game. So if you want to go back and play it in old school black and white or different color schemes to, I guess, enhance the experience, you have that option. Overall, it's a lot of cosmetic stuff, a lot of stuff we've seen before, but the fact that you can play online with a buddy or next to you automatically gives it a 5 from us. And just all the little extras, it bumped it up to 6s. When it comes to beer, I'll just give it 1 beer for being able to make it look like Night of the Living Dead as you play through it again. That's always a nice touch.
So overall, Jim and I don't hate this game nearly as much as most of the people out there. It's definitely a little bit underrated, but it is really just an action game.
Yeah, but it's a good action game. It's better than Uncharted 1.
That's debatable, Jim.
Here comes some hate.
That's goddamn debatable, but what I will say is, I can understand the hate. Going so actiony, the story's it's a bit weak, but if you like action games and you have any love affair for Chris, Wesker, Jill, some could say it's a close to their stories.
And maybe if the AI before made you hate the game, maybe give it a shot now. Maybe my theory's right and it has been patched enough. Could be worth a playthrough. I had a good time with it.
Yeah. So when it comes to scores, I gave it a 7, Jim gave it an 8. I actually bought this game when it first came out, so I still have some of that nostalgia of when it first came out, being a little disappointed it was so action. As Jim mentioned during the video, he played it recently and was pleasantly surprised.
I think the bar was so low. Yeah. I was like, oh, I always hear this is crap, and then I was like, oh, I had fun with it.
Yeah. So when we combined all of our scores together, it rounds out to a 7.6. Surprising because it's not the lowest score. That still stands with Resident Evil 0 for us.
Right, would you say it's a rock-punchingly good score? He punches rocks.
Yes,
it's a meme.
Jim, yes, Jim, I get it.
Internet. I deserve that.
Till next time, guys.
Cheers.
Cheers. When it comes to beer pairings, typically for horror games I go stout or a darker beer, but since this is so action-oriented, I feel comfortable going with the Dogfish Head Flesh and Blood IPA. I really enjoy this beer because the blood orange used within the IPA really helps set it apart from other typical IPA flavors, and it complements a game like this, which sets itself apart from the rest of the series. So, if you're feeling adventurous, get a 6-pack, sit back, and enjoy this game. But remember to drink your beers and play your games responsibly. As always, guys, thanks for checking out this video, and if you enjoyed it, make sure you give us a thumbs up, leave some comments, or better yet, why not subscribe? Till next time, guys, cheers.